Here it is. The U.S. railway companies and unions
Good morning,
have reached a tentative agreement.
George, well, after round-the-clock talks, the president just announcing a short while ago that the railway companies and the unions have reached a tentative deal that could prevent what would likely have been an economically and politically disastrous strike. Now, talks, I'm told, lasted 20 hours. The president himself calling in around 9 p.m. last night to stress that any shutdown would have been catastrophic for the economy. The president, in a statement this morning, is hailing the tentative agreement as an important win for our economy and the American people. Now, talks had stalled over workers' demands for improved conditions, including scheduling sick time, but the president says that the deal reached is a win for thousands of workers, saying they will get better pay, improved working conditions, and peace of mind around their health care costs, describing that as all hard-earned. But the president is also describing this as a victory for the railway companies, who will be able, he says, to retain and recruit more workers. George.
Okay, Mary, and the president had a lot at stake politically as well.
George, the president had a lot at stake. He was walking a very tight rope here. Look, Biden prides himself as being a champion of labor. He often describes himself in speeches as being the most pro-union president ever. And we know he does like that nickname, Amtrak Joe, for his love of the train.
Now, this is coming for months and months and months, by the way. Here's a much earlier news source about this railroad talks that were slated to be had a long-ass time ago. From all the way back in June and July, they were talking about this. And I remember, if I recall correctly, didn't Biden actually break this down by weaponizing the DPS before? Rank and file has not actually voted for this yet, so it's only a tentative agreement. The media is celebrating it like a dub, but the rank and file, from what I understand, is not exactly happy about the concessions made because they're not enough. I will talk to you about the details in a second. But railroad contracts talks remain deadlocked after more than 2 years of negotiations, so President Joe Biden will likely soon have to appoint a board to help settle the dispute. The National Mediation Board determined Tuesday that mediation isn't working in the joint talks that cover roughly 140,000 workers and 13 unions at the biggest freight railroads. They deliver the raw materials many companies rely on. We're talking pesticides. We're talking like shit that you need for clean water. This is how, did I say DPS? I should have said DPA. I apologize. The Defense Production Act. I thought that Biden had also weaponized the Defense Production Act on this striking workers originally. Okay, or not striking workers. Hold on, but this was a couple months ago. I think he did it at the ports. No, he did it at the ports, but the railroad one kind of went under the radar. The federal law that governs the contract that talks says arbitration is the next step, but both sides have to accept that the unions have said that they won't. Freight workers explain why a national railroad strike is looming. This was back in September. This is from yesterday. Sorry. Anyway,
reach out.
Even Newsmax themselves were shocked to learn from a railroad worker that they do not have, they don't seem to get paid time off. We're gonna talk about this in a second, though. We're gonna get into the details. I just wanted to cover the liberal media side of it first, because liberal media and the no. That this is not it. This has been going on for 2 years, chat. I thought that this was an earlier article from like last year or something. I was wrong. This is not the article I was thinking of. But this is something that like people who cover labor news have been talking about for a while. It's been an ongoing issue. I mean, railway workers are getting absolutely cumstered. Should have looked at my links in June. Yeah. Always ignored hints of life of a Hasanabi chatter. Okay, shut the up. Okay. My dad works for BNSF and they regularly overwork and exploit them. Just this weekend, he worked 24 hours straight. He also said that 1 year they gave workers a raise of just 1 cent. A chatter be like, hey, I know this is like, important national news happening, but remember when I asked you to cover it months ago.
But with the midterms looming just 8 weeks away and his economic recovery essentially at stake here and on the line, the president had to find a solution and avoid this shutdown. There is no question this is a win for this White House, and there's definitely a sense of a huge sigh of relief here at the White House this morning.
Bruce, thanks very much.
But the rank and file, for the record, the rank and file are not happy about this circumstance, the contract, and even the current state of affairs. Here, let's we'll look at more perfect union. Update: the 2 largest rail unions have begun distributing strike information and FAQs to workers ahead of the Thursday night deadline for railroads and unions to reach a deal. Workers have been without a contract for 3 years and can legally authorize a strike beginning Friday. One of those 2 unions, Smart TD, yesterday urged congressional leaders to not intervene in the dispute and force a new contract onto workers. It is imperative the negotiation between labor and carriers be permitted to play out. Smart TD is asking supporters to write Congress with the same message. America's railroaders are telling you how to write in the course. Please listen. I'm humbly asking you to let them defend themselves, just as so many workers before have done. A survey of smart TD workers found that they overwhelmingly oppose the federal mediator's proposed deal that includes no changes to attendance policies, sick leaves, or other priorities. Nearly 8 in 10 said they want the union to reject the deal. The deal that the negotiators have put forward do not represent the interests of the rank and file. Because remember, unions themselves have an internal process of additional democracy where your union leaders are still beholden. They can end up doing a contract. They can end up negotiating a contract and bring it up to the rank and file. But the rank and file still have to vote to ratify it, and they can technically say no. No, this is not good. And if they don't actually, like the deal itself, then they could technically turn around and engage in the strike. There is a tentative deal that was reached this morning. This is from yesterday, but I want to hear more from the rail workers using their own words right now on what pushed them to the brink. Okay, because it's important to recognize this, and you're not going to get this kind of coverage. You're not going to get this kind of perspective on mainstream media that literally have brushed this aside for as long as they did, and then exclusively brought this up as a big dub for the Biden White House as soon as there was a tentative deal.
Impact of a railroad strike across the industry, it would be like asking what would be the results if a nuclear bomb went off in New York. Obviously, it would be utter chaos and catastrophe. Seems intentional, like the railroad industry is intentionally trying to create an oppressive work environment so that they can reach their end goal and be able to give more money back to Wall Street.
These workers have worked now for the last 3 years throughout a pandemic, putting themselves and their families at risk without a raise. They have not received any pay increase during that time. At the same time, they've seen their numbers dwindle dramatically. They've also seen the highest profits in the history of railroading over that same stretch of time.
They want more with less, and that comes down to people, resources, locomotives, maintenance, everything.
Railroads have laid off 45,000 people in the past 5 years. That means that they are completely incapable of meeting the demand that is placed on our economy.
Just on duty time, you are very commonly working 80+ hours a week. That does not include the time that you're sitting at the away from home terminal. I mean, you might be away from home, subject to the railroad, not with your family, for 120 hours in a week. On these long runs like we
Mods, if people bring up random irrelevant shit, you don't have to give them like I will perma them. Like if they're long-term community members or whatever, while we're covering this shit, if people are bringing up their own personal drama in the chat or whatever, like it's something that I despise more than anything else. Just ban them permanently. I don't want you in the community if your main takeaway is literally like, oh, this mod banned this person, that person. Like that is so incredibly selfish to the thousands of people that are here that are here to learn about what the going on in the news or whatever. Just, take them out back and clap them. I don't give a if you've been in here for 14 months, 15 months, 7 months, 10 months. You're a fucking loser if you think that is what we should be stopping and talking about right now. Like that a personal chatter was banned and was personally offended or some dumb shit. I ban for way less, and I will continue to do so.
We have where you're on the train consistently 10, 11, 12 hours. It is not realistic for a human being to be by themselves. There's no gas station to stop at to get a cup of coffee when you're nodding off, when you're getting tired. You can't get up and stretch your legs. Let's say the boards are exhausted the way they are, and you think you're going to work at 6 in the morning. Nope, there's a shortage of people. You end up getting called to work at 1 in the morning. When you're tired, you haven't gotten any sleep, you've tossed and turned, and then they expect you to be on a train for 12 hours by yourself. We used to be paid an above average salary because we work an above average lifestyle where we are gone holidays, weekends, but the way inflation is devaluing our purchasing power, that's not really the case anymore. you might only be making like $26 an hour gross when you consider the time that you were on the train, the time after your hours of service expired that you're sitting there in a siding, the time sitting in a hotel up to 16 hours without pay, and the fact that you're having to pay for those meals out of pocket. The sacrifice that we make is not being compensated. In this round of contract negotiations, I believe railroad workers as a whole want four things: an increase in their pay, they want to keep their health insurance, they want the ability to take time off when they're sick, when they need time with their family without being subject to an oppressive attendance policy, and we don't want to be forced to one-man crews the way the railroad wants to cram it down our throat.
They will hear the arguments from both the railroads and the unions about what their asks are and what they think is important. They will evaluate the underlying economic circumstances, the state of the industry, and they'll come up with what they believe is a reasonable resolution to this contract dispute, and they will have their recommendation. At that point, there will be another 30-day cooling off period where the parties hopefully will be able to negotiate off of what the recommendation is. When the cooling off period extends, then the parties will be released, so they would be free to engage in a work action. That would mean, potentially a lockout or a strike.
I definitely believe that railroad workers this time around are ready to strike.
I think people are waking up to how important the supply chain is to their daily lives. I mean, that became very clear when we had these big slowdowns and we had empty storefronts, and that was based on underperformance, but no performance would have bigger impacts across the board.
Imagine how bad the backlog would be if the railroad shut down for a week's time. Just a week. It would be enough that store shelves would be empty. These people do not even care whether there's a railroad industry in 10 years. I care. I have wanted to be an engineer my entire life. I mean, even as a kindergarten, I remember I wanted to be an engineer. I want there to be a freight railroad 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years from now. It seems like essentially these Wall Street cronies are intentionally destroying the industry to absorb as much profit as they can out of it until they've picked it dry and all the blood's gone, and then they can just let it fall.
If we want to actually start fixing the supply chain, if we want to have real solutions to how do we fix our supply chain and make sure that we're more competitive and that we are meeting the needs of our economic system, we need to give these workers the contract they deserve, because that's the only way we're going to be able to rebuild this system and make it more effective and make it more efficient, more productive for our country.
This is from yesterday, the Smart TD one. If you want to taste of how rail members are reacting to the news of a deal, here's the BMWE Facebook comment section, the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way employees. Why is our union post? This is rank and file. Why is our union posting like this? Like this is some kind of game-changing deal. One day is laughable. We need to strike. The paying members didn't agree to this, and better pay was demanded also. No. We wanted paid sick leave days, not unpaid. Now we still have to come to work sick because we need a paycheck. So they got unpaid days off. They're going to vote this down. What they got so far in the tentative deal is quite literally a one day unpaid sick leave, which is a slap to the face of every rank and file member. Okay. Now we don't know all of the details. And here Jonah is saying, I would like to emphasize this point. Anybody who says it's a good deal or a bad deal at this point is going off rumors and reading the tea leaves of Biden's comments or sentence fragments in the mainstream media. Members and even local presidents haven't seen the agreement yet. The main thing is that nobody knows what's in the deal. The releases that have come out are vague and confusing, and contracts come down to enforceable, clear, detailed language. It's not like you get a sick day. It's like a 100-page piece of legislation, but the vibes are bad. So what they have seen so far, the rank and file is not happy with. But we still do not know the full details of what's going on. But I will explain something to you. Here's Jeff Stein with a really helpful chart. One of the most important issues in the rail negotiations is over whether workers could secure any paid sick leave, okay? Paid sick leave. They asked for 15 and got 1. That's the one thing that we know. They got 1 day of unpaid sick leave. Here is the chart from the CEPRDC, the Center for Economic Policy and Research, showing the international comparison. Luxembourg gets 50-day for cancer, 5-day flu, okay? The United States currently has 0. Which is not surprising. Norway's at 50, 50, 50, 5 at the minimum for just the flu. These are paid sick leave days, by the way. Belgium 5 days, Sweden 3.2, Denmark 5 days, Netherlands 3.5. No, not cancer 5 days. No, the cancer one. New Zealand is cancer 5 days, which is kind of a an idiotic thing to do, by the way, overall, claiming that this is like a dub and that the tentative deal will be agreed on or whatever without rank and file's feedback. Without rank and file feedback is really dumb because it will blow up in Biden's face if they haven't actually reached an agreement and people are not happy about it.
President Biden just praising that tentative deal struck earlier this morning to avert a potential rail workers' strike, calling it a big win for America.
And this is a win for tens of thousands of rail workers and for their dignity and the dignity of their work. It's a recognition of that. During these early, dark, uncertain days of the pandemic, they showed up so every American could keep going. They worked tirelessly through the pandemic to ensure that families and communities got the deliveries they needed during these difficult few years.
ABC News transportation producer Sam Sweeney joins me now again just after that speech. Sam, before we get into the details, your thoughts. The speech was quick. It was to the point. Sort of a political victory.
A sigh of relief again for the Democrats. They were worried about this. They've been working several weeks on it. And last night, they worked late into the night, into the early morning, 20 consecutive hours to get the deal done. And the president's certainly happy about this 2 months before the midterms.
And Sam, what were workers fighting for here?
They wanted a pay raise, and they got that 24%. They're also going to get $1,000 a year bonuses. But one of the most important parts that they were hung up on was unpaid sick time. They wanted to be able to go to the doctors, take their kids to the doctors without being penalized. They were often working on a point system, and if they got too many points, they faced termination. And you have to remember, these trained conductors and engineers are often assigned to a trip last minute. They last several days, and it can take them all across the country. So it is tough for the railroad company to come up with schedules, but also really take care of their employees. But they seem to have found a deal.
This strike would have been the first in decades, as you say, crisis averted for so many Americans. How would this strike, though, have impacted the economy? What was at stake here?
$2 billion a day. Our shelves.
Not even just $2 billion a day, baby. No medicine, no agricultural production. This is, I mean, our supply chain works in such a way that if you shut delivery down, like if you shut a fundamental plank of logistics, you shut everything down. Fucking fall apart. Remember during the Long Beach port saga, I talked about an opportunity for the dock workers to literally and delivery drivers, like the truckers and the dock workers, to personally intervene. Like it was a great opportunity for them to do contract renegotiations if they saw, I mean, or not contract renegotiations, but like just to threaten. Yeah, you need chemicals for oil refinement. You need fertilizer shipments. All of that stuff happens through the railways.
And the grocery stores would have been empty. It would have been hard for farmers to get their feed, to also get their wheat back out. It would have been
chemicals for water purification.
It's difficult for the ports to get their product in and out of ports. And of course, it would have put more pressure on the trucking across the country, which were already in short supply of truck drivers. They would have needed an additional 460,000 trucks a day to move the equivalent amount of freight that these trains move, roughly 30% of all freight in the United States.
All right, crisis averted indeed, at least tentatively. Sam Sweeney, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel.
While all of this was happening, Ben Shabibo had a hot take. The entire Democratic union strategy is unions spend billions to get Democrats elected. Unions threaten to strike in advance of an election. Democrats force through an absolute sweetheart deal for unions. Declare victory. You pay for it. Once again, showing his disdain for the working class. Again, a sweetheart deal is like 1 day of paid sick leave, unpaid sick leave. That's psychotic. Biden calling into a late night meeting to ball out railroad executives for intransigence on sick leave and scheduling after Bernie blocked the GOP bill to force a crap deal on workers. We keep hearing about how this pro-working class GOP that will emerge any day now. Now, I'm not entirely certain on whether or not the Democratic administration has offered a decent enough deal here. It doesn't seem like it. We don't know all of the, I can't find the article I read before now, but supposedly at least some part of the need for medical leave paid or unpaid is how much COVID is still affecting rail workers. Yeah, I already covered this. I already showed the chart comparison. The average American would not know that we get fired for going to the doctor. This one thing has our members most enraged. We have guys who were punished for taking time off for a heart attack and COVID. It's inhumane, said Dennis Pierce of the BLET union. So just comprehend that for a moment. Like, the motherfuckers that are running the backbone of this country day in, day out, doing 24-hour, doing like literally 24-hour runs, okay? Those dudes are getting fired for not getting any sick leave whatsoever.
Is part of the contract negotiations.
Here's Bernie Sanders talking about
the rail workers are asking for 15 paid. This is not a radical idea. We are the only major country on earth that does not guarantee paid sick days. In Germany, workers are entitled to 84 weeks of paid sick leave at 70% of their salary. In Norway, workers are entitled to 1 year of paid sick leave at 100% of their salary. In the UK, workers are entitled to up to 28 weeks of paid sick leave. The rail workers in the United States are not asking for 1 year of paid sick leave. They're not asking for 6 months of paid sick leave. They are asking for 15 days. 15 days. Now, the rail industry has said, as I understand it, that they just cannot afford to do that. Just don't have the money. They say it would cost too much money to provide their workers with any paid sick days. Just can't afford to do it. Well, let's see. They made over $20 billion in profits last year. They provide their CEOs with huge compensation packages. And here's something else that everyone should know who's getting involved in this issue. Last year, the rail industry spent over $18 billion not to improve rail safety, not to address the supply chain crisis in America, but to buy back its own stock and hand out huge dividends to its wealthy stockholders. In fact, since 2010, the rail industry has spent over $183 billion on stock buybacks and dividends. So here is where we are, Madam President. It turns out that guaranteeing 15 paid sick days to rail workers would cost the industry.
To play devil's advocate, aren't unions inherently anti-free market by forcing employers to pay above equilibrium, though through collective leverage? Profit is the obligation of private companies. There's a paradox. Not only do I want to nationalize this, and I want to throw you in jail for even trying to play devil's advocate in this circumstance. What the do you mean the free market, dude? It's such an idiotic take. I mean, what you're describing is unironically a facilitation of the free market where workers themselves are not seen as like an unshakable commodity, but instead a force that has some bargaining power. I don't know why you think these guys are just like slaves, you know? You just like, you're buying them like bags of rice. Like you're buying their labor as though it's bags of rice. Econ textbooks have broken people's brains, dude. I swear to God. They literally just think like these aren't people like your dad, your uncle, your family members, but they're just robots. It's also additionally silly when we were talking about the railways, like the railroads, which is a fundamental plank of like our infrastructure. It is incredibly important for our national security. It's incredibly important for commerce to run, which is precisely why the government has to interfere. Like there is no free market. Not a single piece of the railroad is at this stage created or even run by free market. It's the exact same thing. Like they took the government resources, they took the government money, and there's a private patina now on top of it, but it's still absolutely something that the government has to control.
A grand total of $688 million a year. That is less than 3.5% of their annual profits. Now, it seems to me...
Wait, hold on, sorry.
It turns out that guaranteeing 15 paid sick days to rail workers would cost the industry a grand total of $688 million a year. That is less than 3.5% of their annual profits. Now, it seems to me that if 4 major rail carriers can afford to spend over $18 billion a year on stock buybacks and dividends, please.
Oh my God. That kind of shows the holy fuck. That unironically shows how inhumane these scumlords are. That they can't even put 3.5% of their profits that those workers created back into very reasonable demands that the workers themselves are making by way of their labor unions. That is completely, by the way, profits, chat, which is of course extracted labor value that workers without any sort of like labor union, without any sort of mechanism of pushback have no say over. That's why unions are important. You could turn around and go, what the do you mean? We generated $20 billion in profits for you. Give us 3.5% back at the very least. That's why socialists say profits are theft. Oh my Lord.
Please don't tell me they cannot afford to guarantee 15 paid sick days to their workers and allow these workers to have a reasonable quality of life, which they don't enjoy today.
What is this? Have you seen this TikTok yet?
Less than 3 days, all the train workers in this country strike because they can't get their weekends off. And so what's Warren Buffett's response? Meh, just blow up inflation until they stop fighting for better working conditions.
Yeah, right now it is a race against the clock to avoid this major disruption to the supply chain. Tens of thousands of rail workers, they are threatening to strike as early as Friday. They're calling for better working conditions, and that threat is already causing issues. Amtrak canceling some trips going through Chicago, and some freight companies, they've now stopped accepting goods.
Let me translate that bullshit for you. So essentially Warren Buffett and all of his train buddies are telling all the people that already ship goods to our country that they're not moving anything until the rail workers stop striking. Oh, and by the way, because this costs the United States economy $2 billion a day, they're trying to hold Congress and Biden hostage to get them to pressure the
Yeah, this is yesterday. They literally want to do a capital freeze, which is like when capital owners, which obviously have a significantly easier time of demonstrating class solidarity, to pump up inflation as hard as possible. When this mediation was going on, so it would look like the workers themselves are contributing to their own demise, basically. I really feel like people are not appreciating that Warren Buffett and his friends are shutting down the supply chain to force Congress to mandate 125,000 railroad workers to go to work with no weekends. So think about that. Capital owners also have this part of the bargain as well.
For the workers to stop striking.
The Engineers Union and the Smart Transportation Division tell me the measure is unnecessary, calling it corporate extortion. Quote, the railroads are using shippers, consumers, and the supply chain as pawns in an effort to get unions to cave into their demands. Congress must not cave into what can only be described as corporate terrorism.
Just to simplify, we get shit in grocery stores either by train or truck, and trains make up 40% of everything on the shelves. The train companies know that they're an essential part of the American economy, so they just hold Congress hostage to squash these union strikes. But they're
the owners try to starve the U.S. economy by $2 billion a day just to save themselves $700 million a year. So next time someone says the workers are too powerful, ask why the capital owners aren't too powerful in comparison. Like, they can shut the faucet too. They have that capacity as well, and they showed that. By the way, when they shut the faucet up, the workers themselves are suffering as well. They're suffering because if there's no supply chain, if the supply chain breaks down, all of a sudden goods are insanely expensive. When goods are insanely expensive, people's quality of life is diminishing because they can't even get food for their children, right? I say supply chain. If the workers themselves did not get the actual contract that they wanted, the same effect would happen here as well, except they would be on the conditions of the workers, not the capital owners, to shut it down.
They're not even trying to get more money. You know what they're trying to get? They're trying to get sick days and weekends off. Did you know that like half of all rail workers are on call 24/7? They work 7 days a week, and the only time they're able to exercise their 3 weeks of vacation is when they pencil it in 6 months in advance. Just for context, like you and I probably work like a 9 to 5, and we work 5 days a week, and we get 2 days off. So we get 100 days off every year. These guys get 20. You want to hear some sick numbers? Last year, Warren Buffett's train company did $9 billion in net revenue. That's like after everything's paid, salaries, insurance, tax, assets, capital, everything. They did $9 billion in revenue. They could have given each one of their workers a $125K raise and still made $4 billion. But nah, they're fighting over their weekends right now. No, I take that back. They're not fighting for their weekends. They're fighting to go see their kids after they're done working. In less than 3 days, all the train workers in this country are going to go on strike because
Yep. So what's in the tentative deal that the railroad and the unions have negotiated? The Association of American Railroads and Railroads an industry group said in a statement that new contracts would include a 24% increase in wages in the 5 years 2020 through 2024. There's also back pay there as well when the agreement is ratified. In addition, the agreement gives workers one additional paid day off and an ability to attend medical appointments without penalty, labor union said. Measures that are intended to ease what workers said was a rigid scheduling system that didn't allow them to take care of their health or take personal time they needed. The Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen and the Transportation Division of the International Association of Sheet Metal, Air, Rail, and Transportation Workers said the deal would also freeze workers' monthly healthcare contributions, ensuring those costs would not increase during the next round of contract negotiations. Yeah. They're not sure if it's just being part of this community, but are labor actions becoming more and more popular and common? It's it's a bit of both. I think you see more of it because I cover it religiously, but I also do think that it is becoming more commonplace for workers to actually strike and ask for an additional chunk of the profits. Now, the reason for why that's happening is because, more importantly than anything else, I think that the main reason is because at the top of the hour there's a 6-second ad break, and I think people are sick and tired of seeing those ads, and they no longer want to see it, right? So they are getting together and they're saying, okay, we'll subscribe for $5. If we don't have $5, okay, I'll just use someone else's Amazon account and connect it to my Twitch account, and I'll get one free Prime subscription a month, and I'll use it on my favorite streamer who has the best debates. Some people are saying, I'll just sit and wait, maybe I'll get lucky, and I'll get gifted a sub. Those are the ways that you can avoid those ads. Here's the 1 minute ad break now. No, the real reason, go jump off a break. Okay, chill, fucker. The real reason is because there's a tight labor market as a consequence of COVID. Supply chains were disrupted. 1 million people died. People were workers. We shut down immigration. We shut down the economy. Workers started to realize, oh, this is actually a tight labor market. If I quit, it's not going to be as easily replaceable. Thank you, Obama Beats Freak Kebab, for the 5 gifted subs. Light Switch Liquor, thank you for the 5 gifted subs as well. And Jace2571, thank you for the 5 gifted subs, and another 2 gifted subs, allowing 7 people to no longer see the ads. Similar to what happened after the Spanish flu of 1918, it helped to kickstart decades of labor militancy. One of the things that capital fears the most, is a tight labor market that actually reflects the normal economic conditions within a tight labor market, where labor has a better bargaining position. Why do you think people want inflation to rip dicks? Why do you think people actually also personally want workers to, be poorer overall, so they have less of a negotiation, less of a interest in negotiating with their bosses? Railroad workers are on call 24/7. They have a 10-hour mandatory rest period between trips, after which they will be contracted at any time with only 90 minutes before they have to be at work. And when they get that call, they have to drop everything and go to work immediately or get fired. Not to mention the sick leave stuff, not to mention PTO, and not to mention the fact that they're trying to get rid of their health care. Yeah. Liberals always claim that shitty wages and working conditions are fair because of the market mechanisms. And when workers through unions apply whatever little pressure they have on capitalists, literally a market mechanism, they still shit on them. Yeah, they want the nanny state. They want the nanny state to straight up immediately come in and use whatever weapons, whatever tools they have to suppress any kind of labor action. Okay? That's how this shit works. They don't want free market. There's no such thing. There is no such thing as a free market in an economy that is run with subsidies. Okay? What do you mean the free market? The government literally dictates what kind of dairy output has to happen. Okay? They normalize prices. They do this for every facet of agricultural production. There is no such thing as the free market. There is still plenty of centralized planning involved in the American free market and in the free market everywhere else, okay? Speech from Teamsters leader Sean O'Brien.
UPS is our largest collective bargaining agreement in the entire nation. It's the largest collective bargaining agreement for any union in the United States. And this agreement is truly important. It's important because it sets the tone for all other industries in negotiation. Employers watch what happens at the UPS agreement. They watch because they want to gauge whether the Teamsters union is strong, whether the Teamsters union is willing to fight. And the message that I got today, for all these scumbag CEOs, for all these corruptible politicians, and these white-collar crime syndicates, we with us, we with you. It's a full contest. UPS is our largest collective bargaining agreement in the
Teamsters is one of the, if not the most powerful union in North America. Oh, I wanted to show this, by the way. I forgot. Even Newsmax hosts are like, what? You guys don't get paid sick leave? That's crazy.
David, we did reach out to the Association of American Railroads, and they say that workers...
By the way, I love this, okay? Straight up, I'll say it. This guy's got a Blue Lives Matter Punisher flag, and he's wearing the most communist shirt that you could ever see. That is how unions work. That's why I was trying to tell you, it's not about left, it's not about right, it's about what's right. It's about justice, it's about the appropriate mechanism of pushback. Labor unions do not have to all be labor unions do not have to always be fulfilled by people who are running around and defending or trying to take away people's guns and like defending trans rights or whatever. It's just it is completely removed from our binary understanding of American politics. And this is something that a lot of you should recognize. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be a Democrat to be a union member. You don't have to be a Republican to be a union member. There's no such thing. It is just a mechanism of pushback. It is just fair, okay?
Get sick days and paid time off. But what I want to talk to you about is, what does this mean for Americans if you do go on strike?
Whoever told you we get sick days is manipulating the data. We get paid time off that we earned the previous year before. Before the new policy came about, we were allowed to take 5 days off and 2 weekend days off a month. Now we could take virtually 1 day unpaid off a month, and then the only other time we could take off is our paid time that we had to earn the previous year.
Yeah, that does seem ridiculous. They would never let airline pilots do that. Is that issue number one for members of the unions?
He's saying labor does not contribute to profit.
Is number one. And if we go on strike, yes, it could hurt the economy. It could be bad for society, but we don't want to do that. None of us want to do that.
Well, and I know Amtrak's already suspended.
We're not asking for the world here. We're asking for a few days off a month to spend with our family instead of living on a train.
It's sarcastic. Like, I don't see the full labor does not contribute to profits is a sarcastic take. Either it's a sarcastic take, I don't know the full shirt. Either it's an ironic shirt that he's wearing. It's literally it's in quotes, so I assume it's like an ironic shirt that one of these dickheads said, like a quote by one of these like rail executives probably said, right? Because the entire point, and this is something that they teach you in when you join a union, something that you learn immediately, is the classic take that you probably heard here time and time again. There is no value without labor. Labor is what provides value. If you don't have labor, you don't have value, okay? So that's the irony of that shirt. Oh, here it is. The worker shirt is referencing a recent federal mediator's report which summarized the negotiation position of the railroads. The carriers maintain that capital investment and risk are the reasons for their profits, not any contributions by labor. And without labor, and this is hilariously out of touch, because without labor, you're f***ed. You can try to like massage the numbers all you want all day, but without the driving engine, there is no value. There is no profits whatsoever. There is no value whatsoever, okay? Because labor is the only thing that creates value. Even if you automated every part of this, process, there's still labor that has to oversee the automation. That's how it works. Without a human being touching the buttons, which is labor, you are not going to be able to run the trains. Perhaps the most fundamental part of the socialist indoctrination or the socialist understanding is the recognition of the reality that without labor, there is no value. These capitalist dogs might have broken their brains for staring at numbers far too long in front of a Bloomberg terminal, thinking that they are the ones who are generating profit, actually. Massaging the numbers is actually the real thing that's generating profit. Stock buybacks and this sort of thing is actually what is improving shareholder value. Okay, well, you have no shareholder value without labor. That's how it goes. That's why he's wearing that shirt, for those of you who are wondering. We're going to get into the Little Mermaid thing in a second.
We spend 240 to 260 hours a month sitting on these trains or sitting at the hotel rooms away from our families.
That's a lot.
When I leave my house to go to work, I'm gone for at least 2 to 2.5 to 3.
By the way, you see a hog like this, go on Newsmax and put the fucking Blue Lives Matter sticker behind it, and look how agreeable he comes across to the Newsmax host. All of this, American politics is just a dance of aesthetics, dude. It's just straight up. If you looked a little gay, okay, immediately they'd be like, shut up, SJW libtard, shut the up. You don't deserve it. All aesthetics, no substance. Well, it doesn't matter because the substance is within the argument that he is making, okay? The substance is inherent within even the shirt that he's wearing, okay? That's where the real substance comes from.
3 days.
I didn't realize that, David. I
come home and I'm only allowed to be home for 10 hours. Wow. And then I can be called to go right back to be gone for 3 days.
You have a family? Kids?
My kid is 17 years old.
Wow.
A lot of people are wondering why the railroad is facing a strike. It's not money, folks. That's been ironed out already. Quality of life issues. About 50% of railroaders are on call 24/7 unless they're on personal time or already at work. We don't have a schedule. There isn't one. We are on call. After 16 years, I get 3 weeks vacation and 9 personal days a year. That's it. About 30 days. And the railroad wants that to be scheduled. How do you schedule a funeral in October if it's only in February? Schedule for a wedding that hasn't been announced. Schedule to take your spouse to the doctor. Most people get 2 days a week off. With 52 weeks, that's 104 plus days plus 2 weeks. So that equals 118 days off over the year. I get 30 for the year. The railroad is trying its best to make us look like the bad guys here, but we're not. We just want to see our family and live a little. That's up, man. How dare they? Wait, this guy says, how many days do the veterans still in uniform get off and have to be scheduled? They do get more than 30. It's about money? Wait, they do though. Also, yourself, dude. God damn it, I hate these people so much. Ukraine flag in the bio, ass neoliberal shithead, dude. Holy fuck. Veterans still in uniform is hilarious, by the way. He meant active duty personnel, but